Kyle Busch is setting records pretty much on a yearly basis here in NASCAR, but despite this, he gets more hate than any other NASCAR driver. In today's episode, I'm going to step back and look at Kyle Busch's career and compare a lot of his stats to other NASCAR greats. And at the end, we can decide if he deserves a lot of the criticisms he gets, or whether or not we should just step back and appreciate his greatness. This might be a fun, maybe a controversial episode, so let's get started. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Midweek edition of the show. Like I said at the top, we're mainly going to talk about Kyle Busch. I wanted to kind of set this episode aside because he set a major record this last weekend. Wanted to talk about that. Wanted to look at it in the big picture of things. So that's going to be the main focus of today's episode. But before we get too far into that, I do want to talk about a couple quick news and notes coming after Sunday's race. I'm not going to talk about TV ratings every week this year, but it's the second race of the season, and after last week's Daytona ratings looked kind of promising, it looked kind of unique, I figured we'd at least look at this week's ratings, the second race of the season. Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal reported that this year's overnight ratings for the Atlanta race was a 3.0, which is off from a 3.1 in the same race a year ago. So a small dip, clearly, but definitely not as significant of a dip as we've seen the last few years. This goes along with kind of what I said last week, that I think NASCAR has kind of neared its rock bottom. It's kind of hit the bottom of the well, and I think it doesn't really have anywhere else to go but up from here. It's still too early to say that. Now, last week's Daytona 500 ratings overnight jumped up 8% from 2018. That was a huge headline maker. Everyone was talking about it. But then as they got all the data from smaller markets as the week went on, it turns out that last week's Daytona 500 really didn't see much of a jump at all. In fact, it stayed pretty much flat from the year before. My overall expectations for this year's NASCAR season is that ratings will stay about the same. I think we're going to see maybe a 0.1 decrease, maybe a 0.1 increase week to week. It's going to stay kind of similar to what we saw in 2018. 2018, remember, was kind of a record. It was a record-setting year for NASCAR, and for all the wrong reasons. We saw record lows in TV ratings for a lot of different races last year, and all year long I said that the number one driving factor for this was the fact that Dale Earnhardt Jr. was retired. 2018 was the first year in the AD after Dale era, as I've been calling it, and so of course we saw record low TV ratings. This year, Dale's still gone. Dale didn't come back. And now I think maybe some fans have latched on to some of these younger drivers. I figured that ratings would stay about the same this year when compared to last year, and so far, 2 races in, that seems to be pretty much the case. But it is only 2 races. We still have 34 races left this year, not counting the All-Star race, so things could still change, but so far this season's going about, I think, what most of us expected, how most of us expected. Now, I also want to quickly look at some fan mail, because one of y'all sent me something really awesome the other day. I'm going to start trying to trickle these into episodes from now on. Gavin, aka Runnings Racing on YouTube, sent me some pretty awesome stuff. He sent me a couple pretty awesome cards of Matt Kenseth, my favorite, my all-time favorite driver. The other big thing he sent me, even cooler, an autographed Matt Kenseth, I think it's 2009 card? Trying to see if I can get that to focus, but signed by the man himself. Super duper awesome. So thank you, Gavin. I gotta add this to my autograph collection of Matt Kenseth memorabilia. If you also want to send me some cool NASCAR stuff, I'll show it off and shout you out in a future episode as well. Check out the P.O. Box address down in the description below. Now that I've got that housekeeping stuff kind of out of the way, let's talk about the main subject of today's episode, Kyle Busch. Saturday night, Kyle Busch won his 52nd career NASCAR Truck Series race, becoming the now all-time winningest driver in that series' history. If you look at NASCAR's 3 national touring series, the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series, Kyle Busch is now the all-time wins leader in 2 of them. His 92 Xfinity Series wins are by far the most in series history, and now 52 in the trucks are also a record. He's only missing that Cup Series one, but he's still pretty far off from Richard Petty's 200. I don't think he's going to get that one. But hey, 2 for 3 is not bad. In baseball, you'd be a Hall of Famer, so. But now this record got a lot of people talking over the weekend. How important is this Truck Series record to Kyle Busch's legacy? He's a guy who's, in his 30s now. He's a veteran. He's one of the top guys in the Cup Series. What's really the significance of him going down to the trucks and dominating those races? Like, is it really that important? Is it really that impressive? That was the debate this weekend. And I'm here to throw my metaphorical hat into the ring on this topic and give you guys my thoughts on Kyle Busch's career as a whole, what his legacy looks like right now, and where I think he can end up by the time his driving career is over. Now, I know it's hard to talk about Kyle Busch, especially on YouTube, because, like I said at the very beginning, he does have a lot of haters, and I would say a lot of them are probably for good reason. His Cup Series career has been kind of messy to date. He's had run-ins with some of NASCAR's top and most popular drivers, and really hasn't gone very well for him. He's had run-ins with NASCAR itself. He's been fined many times. He's been suspended even. Kyle Busch's career to this point, has been kind of rocky, especially when it comes to disciplinary things, reasons, measures, stuff. So as a result, a lot of people don't like Kyle Busch that much, it seems. Some people think he's a crybaby, he whines a lot, he's arrogant. I've heard all these words, and I think a lot of them maybe have some merit. I'm not going to say Kyle Busch is a bad guy. I think he seems like he's a pretty nice guy. A lot of drivers like and respect him. But he definitely has done some questionable things in his career that, we can't really look past. So he deserves the hate. When he shows up for driver intros and half the crowd boos him, honestly, he deserves it. But that's not really what this video is talking about. I want to talk mostly about his on-the-track success, because he has had a lot of on-track success in all 3 NASCAR series, and I want to compare his stats to some of NASCAR's greats. And I want to tell you guys why I think Kyle Busch honestly might deserve more respect than he's been getting. I want to focus on this stat, win percentage. Now I'm going to start with the truck series, because this is the series that Kyle Busch has by far dominated, more than any driver in NASCAR history. Kyle Busch has a series best 52 career wins in the truck series. Now he set that in only 146 starts. His win percentage in the truck series is 36%, which means he wins approximately 36% of the races he starts in that series. Now the guy whose record he broke, Ron Hornaday, who had the truck series all-time wins record for several years there at 51, his win percentage isn't nearly as impressive. He won those 51 races in 360 starts. So Ron Hornaday's win percentage was only 14% compared to Kyle Busch's 36. Now I was curious, so I went and looked at some of the other top truck series drivers in NASCAR history and compared their winning percentages to Kyle Busch's. Mike Skinner won 28 truck races and 231 starts, which amounts to only a 12% winning percentage. Greg Biffle won championships in the truck series. He had 16 truck wins and 81 starts, but even that was only good for a 20% winning percentage, still far off from Busch's 36. Kevin Harvick, who's often compared to Kyle Busch, only has 14 truck wins and 123 starts, an 11% winning percentage. I could keep going down the list here, but at the end of the day, Kyle Busch's 36% winning percentage in the truck series is more than double that of almost any other driver. Now, I think it also deserves to be mentioned that Kyle Busch runs his own team in the truck series, Kyle Busch Motorsports. That's who he's driving for, and that's who he's winning these races for. I know he has a little bit of an alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing, but it's still Kyle Busch signing the drivers, signing the paychecks, organizing everything. We've heard him talk about running this team in the past. It's still Kyle Busch driving almost everything. So for him to not only dominate the business side, but also the on-track side, the truck series should be renamed the Kyle Busch series. I mean, honestly, he is the owner of this league. Now, I know what you guys might be saying. That's not that impressive. He's racing against kids. As you already said, he's a Cup Series champion, for Pete's sake. Why has he got to keep racing kids? Like, it's not that impressive. Sure, that's fine. Although, you do look at some of the guys in the truck series. Ron Hornaday, he broke his record pretty easily. That guy drove for years in the truck series. He was a veteran driver. Johnny Sauter, he continues to beat on a weekly basis. Matt Crafton beats all the time. There are veterans that he beats in the truck series too. And I even threw guys like Kevin Harvick, Greg Biffle out there who were really good during their time in the truck series. And he's still winning at a much faster rate than they ever did. So that's a fair argument. He's not racing against great competition in the truck series. But man, when a guy wins more than a third of the races he starts, that's pretty crazy. If we look at the Xfinity series now, where Kyle Busch is also the all-time wins leader, he has 92 career wins in the Xfinity series in 345 starts, which is a 27% winning percentage. Not too far off from his truck series percentage, but definitely lower because the competition is greater. But again, I want to compare that 27% winning percentage to some of the other greatest drivers in Xfinity series history. Some of these guys you might have heard of. Some of these guys might even be NASCAR Hall of Famers right now. Mark Martin, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, won 49 Xfinity races in 236 starts, but that still is only a 21% winning percentage, pretty far off from Kyle Busch. Kevin Harvick's Xfinity Series win percentage is only 14%. Brad Keselowski's win percentage is only 15%. Those are two great drivers in the Cup Series today that ran similar equipment to Kyle Busch during their times in the Xfinity Series, but did not have nearly the same levels of success. Kyle Busch is winning races in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series at an insanely high rate. I mean, there's a reason NASCAR has enacted rules over the last couple of years limiting the number of Xfinity and truck races Cup Series guys can compete in. It's because they're tired of Kyle Busch winning every week. Almost every single Xfinity race, we see some Cup guys run. We see Kevin Harvick in Stewart-Haas equipment often. We see Joey Logano or Brad Keselowski run Penske equipment very often. But they don't win nearly as often as Kyle Busch does in that series. Oh, but Eric, he's got that Joe Gibbs Racing equipment. They're all racing in Fords and Chevys and stuff. It's not a fair comparison. Joe Gibbs Racing hasn't won an Xfinity championship since 2016. Last couple of years, it's been Chevys. It's been Junior Motorsports winning championships. So Joe Gibbs Racing's great, but to say they're definitely the best Xfinity Series program, I don't know. I mean, Penske's is pretty good. Junior Motorsports is pretty good. Stewart-Haas is pretty good. To say they're the best is debatable. But now let's move on to the Cup Series, because here's where I want to kind of wrap up my argument here. Kyle Busch is currently 11th on NASCAR's all-time wins list, Cup Series win list we're talking now. He has 51 career wins. Last year, Fox Sports rated him as the 12th best driver in NASCAR history. More or less, that ranking is pretty fair. Kyle Busch, 11th most wins in Cup Series history. He only has one championship in the Cup Series. Okay, fine, he's 12th. He's 12th. I can understand that. But at the same time, I think you could make a serious argument that he's already a top 10 driver in the Cup Series. Let's go back to win percentage. I know you guys are tired of that. Kyle Busch has 51 career wins, and he just made his 500th ever start. So that's a winning percentage of approximately 10%. Pretty easy math there. Let's look at some other great drivers that many people kind of compare Kyle Busch to these days. Rusty Wallace, for example. He's retired now. His winning percentage, however, during his Cup Series career was only 8%. Less than Kyle Busch's. Even though he has more career wins, Rusty Wallace has 55 career wins, but in more than 700 starts. Let's look at Darrell Waltrip, a guy who is widely considered to be one of the top 6, top 8 drivers in NASCAR history, 84 career wins, but if we look at his winning percentage, it too is also right there at 10%, pretty much even with Kyle Busch. And when we factor in Kyle Busch's dominance in the Trucks and Xfinity series to the point where they're changing rules to try and keep him from winning so much, I might give the edge to Kyle Busch. Let's look at Dale Earnhardt, top 5 driver in NASCAR history. Some people would make the argument he's number 1, 76 career wins, but if we look at his winning percentage, 11%. Better than Kyle Busch, so he definitely should be higher than him, but not by as much as I think people would be willing to admit. When people think Dale Earnhardt, they think Mount Rushmore of NASCAR, one of the top 4 guys of all time. Legendary. Kyle Busch is right there. I mean, when we look at wins, he's right there. Now, up to this point, it sounds like I've basically been all in Kyle Busch's corner. He should be one of the best drivers ever. Now, no, there's still plenty of fair criticisms about Kyle Busch. Dale Earnhardt Sr., he did win 7 championships. Kyle Busch has 1, and some people debate that championship because he did miss a third of the year with an injury. And so here now is where there are some very fair criticisms of Kyle Busch. He is not, I don't know what the right word is, he's not clutch? Can I say that? Does that make sense? I don't really like using that word, but he's not clutch. He doesn't win in the biggest moments very often. He's had to learn over time how to compete for championships. Early in his career, and we see this with a lot of young drivers, early in his career he'd win a lot of races but wouldn't get very good points finished. I think back 2008, he won 8 races that year in 2008, but he only finished 10th in the point standings. It's not very good. But if we look at Kyle Busch more recently, specifically in the Gen 6 era, which I think is really where we've seen Kyle Busch come into his own, he's hit the prime of his career. The prime of his career probably started around 2013, and he's still in it right now. During that time, since the Gen 6 car was created, he leads the series with 27 wins. Better than Harvick, better than Johnson, better than anyone else, Kyle Busch is at the top of the board since 2013. He's also been to 4 straight championship 4s. This current playoff format was sort of introduced in 2014 with the whole knockout rounds and the whole championship 4 at Homestead. Kyle Busch has made it in 4 of the 5 years and each of the last 4. Year in, year out, for him to always be there at the end of the season, to always have a shot at the title at Homestead, that definitely deserves to be praised. However, he's also 1 for 4 in winning that Homestead race. He only has 1 championship. And I think that's where the biggest criticism is going to come of Kyle Busch. He's won a lot of races in anything he's driven. Trucks, Xfinity, even lower series, Cup, he wins a lot. He's always going to be one of the winningest drivers year in, year out, every single season. But until he wins at least 1 or 2 more championships, I don't think very many fans are going to take Kyle Busch super seriously as a real Mount Rushmore of NASCAR contender. And here's where I kind of want to wrap up this topic. Kyle Busch, if we just look at the wins, if we just look at the way he's dominated 2 of NASCAR's national series during his career, he should be considered a top 5, top 6 driver in NASCAR history, the way Jimmy Johnson is. Jimmy Johnson sometimes gets called the best driver in NASCAR history, already over Richard Petty, just because of the era he's raced in and the fact that he won 5 straight championships. Kyle Busch has raced in that exact same era, and yes, he's not been as successful as Jimmy Johnson, so I don't think he should be compared to him yet. He could easily be in the top 5, top 6 consideration, especially given the era. The 90s, 2000s, and 2010s have been the most competitive era for NASCAR. No disrespect to Richard Petty, but things just weren't the same back then. I want to hear your guys' opinion, of course, but to wrap things up, I think Kyle Busch right now is probably the 10th best driver in NASCAR history. He's nearing the 200 win mark, which is not the same as Richard Petty's, so people need to chill out with that. He has 195 wins across Xfinity, Truck, and Cup Series combined. Still very impressive, but come on, it's not Richard Petty's. But my final point is, if Kyle Busch does break through and win 2 more championships, let's say, he's only, 33 years old. He's got 10 more years of racing. There's a good chance that could happen. But if he does, if he manages to win 2 more championships, I will give serious consideration to Kyle Busch being one of the top 5 drivers in NASCAR history. Given some of his Truck Series and Xfinity Series domination, given the era he's raced in, given the competition he's raced against, given the fact that he's dominated also the Cup Series since 2013. We've talked about how he's dominated Trucks and Xfinity his whole career. Since 2013, about 5-6 years now, he's been the best in the Cup Series as well. Given all that, considering all that, I think Kyle Busch could become a top 5 driver in NASCAR history, up there with the likes of Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, me, probably not Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy's got those 7 titles. That's pretty slick. But he could be up there with some of the greats. And I don't think enough fans are willing to admit that. You know, because when you look at the numbers, you can't deny Kyle Busch is a top 10, top 12 driver easily in NASCAR already. If he wins a couple more championships, that's all he's lacking. If he can finish the job, Kyle Busch is going to be a top 5 driver in NASCAR history, in my opinion. And I don't know if fans are going to react. I don't think fans are going to react to that very well. But they might want to start getting used to the idea so that when it does happen, because I think it will, they aren't shocked and they aren't distraught. Get used to the idea of Kyle Busch being on the Mount Rushmore of NASCAR. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, y'all, that's all I have. Thank you all so much for watching, so much for listening and everything. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you think Kyle Busch is a top 10 driver in NASCAR history today? Do you think he has the potential to be a top 5 driver of all time? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear all of your opinions. Of course, thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are down in the description. I already shouted out my P.O. box. Thanks for sending me cool stuff, y'all. Also, you can get Out of the Groove t-shirts if you want to support the show. Support me. Get yourself an Out of the Groove shirt down by the description. Rep the show everywhere you go. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison, at G was at the stars, selfishgifts.com, Mentally Defective, Cameron James Keismore, John Koblenz, Tim Shingen, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, and the rest of these amazing supporters. Goodness, I'm getting really good at reciting all y'all's names. Those y'all who have the shout-out access on Patreon, man, I've like memorized y'all's names down to the T. I could spell them all out immediately. This would be amazing. Thank you for the support, everyone. Really appreciate the support from all you guys on Patreon. If you also want to help support the show, support me, check out that link down in the description. And I really appreciate it. Keeps the show rolling. I'll be back with another episode later this week. Not really sure yet what I'm going to talk about. Maybe I'll do a preview for Las Vegas. We do have, it's kind of still a new aero package to expect this weekend, so maybe I'll talk about that. We'll see. Thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate the support. This show has been a ton of fun to do so far this year, and I'm looking forward to the coming weeks, coming months, and the coming years. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for the support. I'll see you guys again later this week.